Alright, we're going to finish up the 4B notes. We're going to do several word problems, then we're going to do some inequalities in the end. The sum of two consecutively numbered gym lockers is 243. What are the locker numbers? Now, consecutive numbers are really just you're counting them in order. Now, everybody had a locker in high school. Well, if you did go to public school, they always had the lockers. They're always numerical. And so they're just consecutive numbers. So if you had locker number 147, the next one next to it is one more than it, which is 148. Now if I want to represent any two pairs of consecutively numbered lockers, I'm going to make the first one X, and the next one will be just one more than it. So there's the first locker, and there's the second locker. Now if I'm summing them, that means I'm adding them. So X plus 1 equals 243. So now, X plus X is 2X plus 1 equals 243. Then I'm going to subtract 1 from each side, so I get 2X equals 242. Divided by 2, so I get X equals 121. So if the first gym locker is 121, the second one's got to be one more than it, and that's 122. So those are my two lockers. Now they do several different kinds of versions of this. Sometimes they'll say consecutive even numbers or odd numbers. So if I'm looking at consecutive even or odd, now remember, even numbers like 2, 4, 6, 8, they always go up by 2. 3, 5, 7, 9, they always go up by 2. So you have consecutive even or odds, the first one's going to be X, the next one's going to be 2 more than it. Okay, so in even or odds, I know you're going to see this in the notes, in the homework. So that's kind of a little sidebar. That has nothing to do with this current question, but you'll see something like that. Alrighty, the sale ones, they're a little bit difficult at first, but once you get the pattern down, you'll be fine on these questions. This was, the price of a suit was decreased to a sale price of $526.40. This is a 20% reduction. So now, what they do is, when you're doing a sale, if you go to it, you'll see the regular price, and they'll take away the discount, and you get the sale price. So now, the regular price, we'll just make it, it's 100% of the original, that's the original price. If I take away 20% of it, that gives me the sale price. So I have 100% minus 20%, it's really 80% of the original price is equal to the sale price. So that's with a 20% reduction. So I don't know what the original price is. That's the question I'm trying to figure out. 80% as a decimal, we change it to 0.8. Of is multiplication. I don't know what the price is, so I'm just going to make it P equals the sale price, which I know is $526.40. So I'm going to divide each side by 0.8. And when I do this on the calculator, I get equal to $658. So now, as a little sidebar here on it, so let's say the sale price was $40, and this was a 40% reduction. So what I do is I do 100 minus 40% equals it's 60% of the original cost. So it would be 0.6 times the original price equals the sale price. So I divide each side by 0.6. And so when I do 40 divided by 0.6, I get 66.6666, etc. It goes on forever. But now, since we're dealing with money, we're normally going to round it to the nearest cent, so that'd be $66.67. Okay, but if you notice, if it's 40% off, I'm going to do 60%. If it's 20% off, I'm going to do 80% because we're just doing 100% whatever the reduction is. Because sales are always taking off the prices. Now, as discounts you take off, taxes you always add. So we have the original price again. We start at 100%, but this time we're going up 5%. So 105% of the original cost equals $131.25. So it's $131.25. So when I do 100 plus 5, that's really 105%. Now if I change that to a decimal, that's 1.05 times the original price equals 131.25. I divide by 1.05. 131.20 divided by 105 is $125. Okay? Remember, when they're doing including a 5% tax, we're adding it. Whenever I go to the store, they always add the tax to my thing. They don't take it away. Discounts, like this question, this is when you take away the 20% reduction, taxes go up. But it's the same basic concept here. Okay? Alright, so we're going to have El Cheapo Rent-A-Car Company here. We're going to rent a luxury car at $45.20, which is the base fee, plus 20 cents a mile. A business person is allotted $78 for car each rental day. How many miles can the person travel on $78? So, we have $45.20. That's how much it costs no matter what. If I don't even drive it off the lot, which makes no sense, I know, but it's going to be $45.20. And then we're going to add 20 cents a mile. So it's 0.20. And I'm just going to let m equals mile because I don't know how far I'm driving. Now, I can only spend $78, so it's got to be less than or equal to $78. So now I have to solve for the letter m here. So I'm going to subtract $45.20 from each side. And when I subtract the $45.20 from each side, I'm left with 0.20m equals $32.80. I divide each side by 0.20, and I get 164 miles. So if my max to spend is $78, I cannot drive over 164 miles per day. All right, number 16. People panic about this question all the time. Deep breaths. It looks terrible, but it's not terrible at all. Please, when we get the fractions, because clearly there are fractions in here, let the calculator do the work and you will not have a problem. I will show you where the majority of the mistakes are made. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to translate this into an equation. So, if we double a number, okay, well, I'm going to use the letter n, that's my number. I'm going to double it, so that means I'm going to times it by 2. And then you add 28. Well, I'm going to plus 28. Okay. And so after 28, I'm going to get, that's just like is, it's equals. Now everybody gets the 4/9 part correct, but it's of the original number. So that means I really got to multiply by n. People will forget this n all the time and get the wrong answer. But remember, it's 4/9 of the original number. So from here, we have multiple choices to do. We could try to get rid of the fractions, but we have a calculator that does the work for us. So I want to get the n on the same side. So I'm going to move the n to the right-hand side. So since I'm swapping sides here, I'm going to write minus 2n, minus 2n. So then I'm left with 28 equals, and after typing this on the calculator, I get negative 14 ninths n. And again, just let your calculator do this. So now, just like Here, this question up above here, use a little different color pen, right up here, whatever was attached to the m, I divide it by. So in this case, what's attached to my n that I want to solve for? Well, negative 14 ninths. So I'm going to divide by negative 14 ninths. Divide by negative 14 ninths. Then please just let the calculator, just type in 28 divided by negative 14 over 9, and you get n equals negative 18. Okay, so please, you're just 4 ninths minus 2. Yes, that's difficult, but just type it on the calculator. We got to divide by it, just type it on the calculator. The calculator's doing the work, so please just know your algebraic steps. This last part here, we're just going to be graphing some inequalities, and there's some short equations to graph. I had troubles with the little graph lines. I got some on there, but it was a little crazy. So, all right, so we're going to graph x is greater than 4. Now, most of you learned the open circle way. And then when it's less than or equal to, this would be a closed circle. Greater than or less than, the book here likes to use parentheses. So what I would do, first of all, since it's greater than, the arrow, if I imagine this is an arrow, if I do x is greater than 4, if I draw a line, imagine it's an arrow, it's pointing to the right, isn't it? So what I do is I go to 4, I put a parenthesis on there, and then I draw it out there. That's what x is greater than 4. If I wanted to do a graph like x is less than 2, I'd go to where 2 is, and since this is pointing to the left, I would draw it this way. Okay, and that is an arrow, that is not a parenthesis. X is less than 2 is right there. Alright, so now this is x is less than or equal to 2. Most people learn the filled in dot for this. What this book uses is brackets. So I'd go to 2, and since the arrow is pointing to the left, I'm going to open up the bracket to the left, and then I'm just going to shade it in, and you're going to draw that out. A lot of the times they're going to give you the graphs to pick from, and you just have to pick the correct graph. You don't have to draw these like I'm drawing these on by hand. Just pick the right, they'll be like A, B, C, D, you pick the right one. So now this next one, negative 2 is less than x is less than or equal to 4. So in other words, x is in the middle. Now if negative 2 is less than, that means negative 2 has a parenthesis. So I'm going to put that. This is less than or equal to 4, so 4 has a bracket. And then it's in between, so I just shade in between. Okay, and then you'll just be graphing these things. Now they'll occasionally give us, whoa, well that was strange. We have to solve, we have a little mini equation. Now the majority of the equations are just going to be the same way you solve all these things. Just like a regular equation. So what's the opposite of subtracting 8? Well, we're going to add 8 to each side. And when I do that, I get 13x is less than 91. I divide each side by 13. We get x is less than 7. So now, if we had a piece of graph paper to draw it on, here I'll use this, I'll fudge this into another question here. We draw my number line here, there's 0, there's 7. Since it's less than, it's a parenthesis, and the graph is going to be shaded that way. So I put a parenthesis on 7, and then I just draw the graph that way. And again, you'll just pick the graph, which one works for you. All right. Now this is the one where we're solving the equation, it gets a little tricky. And the only reason is, to solve for x here, we have to divide by a negative. Whenever I divide or multiply by a negative on an equality, I have to flip the inequality. So it is now x, instead of greater than, it is now less than or equal to negative 7. If I were to draw this graph, here's 0, here's negative 7. It's less than or equal to, so I'm shading to left, and it's also a bracket, so it looks like this. Okay, but the key on this is if I'm multiplying and dividing by negative, I have to flip it. If I'm doing 3x is less than negative 9, I divide each side by 3. I do not flip it here because I'm dividing by a positive 3. This is just x is less than negative 3. But let me do a different color here. Let's say it was negative 3x is less than positive 9. Here I'm dividing each side by negative 3. So I am dividing, so now it'll be x is greater than negative 3. I only flip when I'm multiplying and dividing by a negative number. Alrighty, and really the last question. I'm not going to, if we were in class, I could do this. This was a silly question that I did, but it's very difficult, and I would want to do it with you. If you want to ask about that question, we could do it in class, and I can go over that, but I'm not going to put this in the notes. So for this next one here, I got to get rid of the parentheses first. So I have to distribute the 2 to each one. So it's 2x minus 6 minus 5 is less than or equal to. I got to distribute the 3, so it's 3x plus 6 minus 18. Now I always try to combine my like terms first. So minus 6 minus 5, that's 2x minus 11. And then this is 3x minus 12. Now for inequalities, when you look at the answers, they're always going to have, when you get to pick from it, they're always going to have the left. The x is always going to be on the left-hand side. So it's going to have less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal. But the x is always on the left-hand side. Now my instinct is move the x on the right-hand side, but that's going to be a problem when it's an inequality. It is correct, but you just have to remember to do the double flip in the end. But I'm going to move the x to the left-hand side, so I'm going to subtract 3x. So I get negative 1x minus 11 is less than or equal to negative 12. Then I'm going to add 11 to each side. Then I get negative 1x is less than or equal to negative 1. I divide each thing by negative 1. All right, so now I'm dividing by a negative. So now it's x. It's got to be greater than or equal to 1. And then that's my answer. So some of those you'll have a couple steps and you'll have to work your way through it. Alrighty. That was a little longer than expected. It's about 17 minutes, but we did all the questions. And if you have any questions, again, please ask in class, and we'll do lots of these questions in homework.